Hello, my name is Levison Wood and I'm an explorer, and I'm going to be reading you a little story, a bedtime story from my book Incredible Journeys. And tonight's instalment is all about one of the great explorers of the world. His name was Alexander the Great. When I walked across the vast plains and deserts of Arabia a couple of years ago, I was treading in the footsteps of one of the greatest explorers, warriors and rulers the world has ever known. When Alexander the Great was born in the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon in 356 BC, a temple burned. In those days, a burning temple prophesied a catastrophe. Everyone thought the world was going to end. But no prophecy could have foreseen the impact that this little baby would have on the world. Alexander grew up in the court of his father, King Philip of Macedon. And when he was 20 years old, Alexander's father was assassinated. He was killed, and Alexander ascended the throne, so he became the king himself. Now, his dad, Philip, had been a great warrior himself, and the young king, Alexander, was determined to continue with his legacy. In doing so, he conquered all of Greece. And then, after that, he set his sights on the mighty Persian Empire, what's now Iran. So he took his men, his army of Greek warriors, and Alexander crossed into what's now Turkey. And he raged all the way through Syria and Egypt, conquering everything in his path. And along the way, he used to use a sword and a spear, but the sword was a bit like this, a big dagger, look at that. And this is from an area that he conquered later on in the Caucasus. And he rode an amazing stallion, a horse, and this was the kind of whip that he would have to make sure that his horse went fast enough. By the age of 25, Alexander had an impressive number of titles. He was not only the king of Macedon, leader of the Greeks, but overlord of Asia Minor, pharaoh of Egypt, and the great king of Persia. So he was in charge of a lot of places. But still, he remained unsatisfied. He was a bit greedy. In the 8 years that followed, Alexander and his army fought their way east. They went all the way through Afghanistan into what is now Pakistan and India. And actually, there's an amazing legacy that he led, because the ancient Greek warriors, when they weren't on their horses, when they wore their helmets, they used to wear hats like this. And this hat is called a pakul. And now these hats, you can find them all over modern day Afghanistan and Pakistan. And this is a legacy that dates back all the way back to the time 2,500 years ago to the time of Alexander the Great. Isn't that amazing? The hat can last that long. Alexander was a mighty leader who fought in every battle and led from the front. He tamed a wild stallion named Bucephalus, and he rode him at the head of his army. But Alexander was also a very clever man. He was a great scholar, a diplomat, and an explorer. He was fascinated by the world, and he used to learn languages, and he used to learn other people's cultures. And he united his vast empire through trade. So he wasn't just a bloodthirsty warrior. He made sure that he brought cultures together and made sure that they traded with each other. He learned new languages, immersed himself in new cultures, and even studied philosophy. Alexander inspired huge loyalty in his troops, who followed him without question. But it must have been very hard for them to travel so far away from everything they knew, because they didn't know when he wanted to turn back. And they all thought he was going to keep conquering forever and ever. But though they might have been scared, my experiences have taught me that it is also an honour to push new boundaries and cross new frontiers and visit remote and awesome places. So I think they all felt like they were part of a team. What a historic time to be alive. And to explore alongside Alexander must have been an incredible experience. And in my book here, you can see a map, all the places that he travelled. And he started here in what's now Greece. He travelled to Troy, to what's now Turkey, Asia Minor. From there, he went through the Middle East, through places like Syria, Palestine, into Egypt. He conquered Egypt. And he named lots of cities after himself as well. So cities like Alexandria in Egypt is named after Alexander. From there, he went back through Syria, across the Euphrates River, through what's now Iraq. He went down to Babylon, where he lived for a while. It's also said that's where he died. From there, he went into Persia, into Iran. He went into Afghanistan, There's another city in Afghanistan called Kandahar, and the name Kandahar comes from, they got the name wrong. They thought his name was Iskander instead of Alexander, and that's where the name Kandahar comes from. And then he went all the way up into Central Asia, into what's now Pakistan, where he encountered elephants for the first time. Can you imagine if you come all the way from Greece, you had no idea what an elephant was, and then you come across an army who were riding elephants? Some people say he was very scared and that's when he turned back. But I think the reality is his men who'd been travelling for so long, they wanted to go home and see their families. So they decided they were going home with or without him. So he had to turn back. But sadly, he only got as far as Babylon, where he had been based before, and that's when he died. And after that, no other leader has been quite so famous in making their mark on the world as Alexander the Great. What an incredible person, and what an incredible story. So I hope you've enjoyed tonight's story. Tune in again for more incredible journeys.